to applied and then the actual business of building the various systems. It's extraordinary. And your testimony, probably 2 or 3 flights across the country for the chairman and I to absorb all of the data that you've given me. So thank you so very much for that. I've got about 20 different questions and about 5 minutes in which to ask all the questions. We're really honing in on the culture of the Coast Guard here. But before I go to that, your testimony and really your work is based upon the application of science and research, much of which is funded through the various federal organizations, National Science Foundation, for example, U.S. Navy, another example that was given here a moment ago. That's really beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but it is the application of those, of that science and the development of the various techniques and technologies that have come from it that we're focused on, and most particularly on the culture of the Coast Guard. I'm sorry that the Admiral left, but the reality is that there is within the Coast Guard 2 things operating, it seems to me. First, the culture is not one of adapting quickly new techniques and technologies. And secondly, a lack of money to do so if, in fact, that culture did exist. So my questions go to, from your points of view and the work that you do, how can we encourage the Coast Guard to more quickly adopt the systems that you have developed, the research that you may have available, and just that area? So how can we motivate change or otherwise encourage the Coast Guard to be a first adopter of a technology? Dr. Terrell, and then right on down the line, we can go at it.
Sure.
Money, okay.
Well, I'm not prepared to discuss procurement reform, but as an observation, what I've seen in the Department of Defense, especially those parts of the Department of Defense with seawater in their veins, is that they organize vertically integrated programs that bring together the operational fleet all the way down to the R&D community as part of these test beds or exercises that provide opportunities to demonstrate technologies to those in uniform, having them work together so that there's early adoption within those with uniforms so that they can be the apostles within their own organization to start. Many times there's not an awareness of what the capabilities are, and having opportunities for the young lieutenants to actually be observant of the capabilities goes a long way, at least within the Navy.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
So we're not really the National Science Foundation level. We're talking about companies that are selling technologies. And my experience is the Coast Guard is extraordinarily operationally oriented. And so to try and get the attention of people in various areas is very difficult. They want it to go through New London. And I think one of the things that could be done, again, this is a cultural issue, is to encourage them to be looking for technologies and to give them an opportunity to meet with industry. I had a former Coast Guard officer say to me that some years ago he felt that there was it was much easier for him to work with and meet with technology companies, and that they no longer have their tech forum, which they used to have 5 years ago, 6 years ago. They're no longer encouraged the same way. Again, this is somebody telling me, so I'm saying this third hand, that he felt like there wasn't the same exchange of information and opportunity between industry and Coast Guard. And again, that's a cultural issue. So what I proposed was that each sector have people whose job it is, maybe it's 15% of the deputy commander's job, to go find technology, meet with industry, so they can funnel it up to New London rather than having it all centralized and potentially putting something on the West Coast. So I think there are cultural things that, notwithstanding the fact it's an extraordinary and operational, every day, saving a life, plus its military role, I think there are things that can and should be done.
Mr. Chance.
Sure, I would certainly second what you just said on the concept of having somebody concentrate on that, on meeting with industry and finding out what is available today. I would also say that this hearing has already having its effect. You know, I'm looking at it aggressively, which I probably didn't as much as I should have in the past, and now we're lining up meetings with the Coast Guard, RD and T&E. And seeing the funding that the Coast Guard has gotten more recently to be able to push in this direction is certainly going to help hugely.
Thank you.
I can't speak necessarily to the culture of the Coast Guard, but I can say that some of the challenges that the Coast Guard probably faces in implementing some of this new technology, you see that same hesitancy within the tech community and the investment community, and the potential of the blue economy. And so trying to get IBMs and the Intels and the Oracles of the world to take those lessons learned in emerging technology and apply them to the ocean, the investment community has been a Herculean task, and I've only been doing this for a year, but that also allows for an enormous amount of opportunity to address those problems.
Thank you. Professor?
Thank you for this question. I've spent the last 25 years of my career developing software tools that I thought could be useful for many entities or industries. And every time I tried to take these tools to these entities or industries, I got resistance. I found that the path past that resistance in almost every single instance has been the idea that these tools should be co-developed, that the stakeholders should be involved in the development process through the development process. And also, the second piece has been educational partnerships, where folks are brought together and brought along. Perhaps that could be one of the ways in which we could encourage industry, academia, and the Coast Guard to work together to really understand what the key issues are, the barriers are that are preventing adoption, and work our way past those together.
Admiral?
I said a lot already. I'll just say that the Coast Guard has been successful in many areas of innovating. Look at the work they've done at the Joint Interagency Task Force in combating a lot of transnational criminal activities through information surveillance, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Look at the work they've done against illegal fishing activities such as high seas drift nets, going backward, and more modern entities as well. The Coast Guard can and does innovate. I still get back to, I think in many ways, it's a problem of resources, and that you've got to invest the resources up front in the longer term rapid transition of the tech that is out there. But I know we all believe it's something that has to be done, so I think we need to look hard at the resources that are available to the Coast Guard to work in partnership with the Navy and the others to address these gaps, sir.
It would be a serious error for me to try to sum up all that you said, but it seems to me that there are a couple of things here. First of all, the culture of the Coast Guard. Take care of today's problem, operational words that are used. That, I think, goes to the incentives of the, if promotion included innovation, the innovation of an officer or of any individual, of the 42,000, if their promotion also included their interest in innovation and bringing innovation online. So now you build a different cultural attitude. Secondly, the resource, which is a problem that the Coast Guard does have to deal with. I guess we have to deal with it. And we noted the 47% reduction in the research technology. And the third is interaction with other governmental agencies. Seem to be the three lessons that I would draw from this. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I'd like to differentiate, too, between super high-tech stuff that is in its infancy stages and is nascent,